Hi, this is the Philosophical Angle program, and I am your host, Chris Angle. I'm the author of 4 books in philosophy, and one of which is Defining Ethics, Good and Evil. And these books are available free for viewing at thephilosophicalangle.com. If you'd like to contact us, make comment, hit that like button, or give us an email at contact@thephilosophicalangle.com. The purpose of the philosophical angle is to examine the nature of concepts and ideas in current media. And so what's happening lately, of course, is the crisis on the border. And so let's discuss that. And the title of this podcast will be Why the Left Created the Border Crisis. And so the first thing you need to do in order to understand why they created this border crisis is to understand the difference between the left and the right. And so there are 2 political parties going back all throughout history, right back to when man became tribal. You always had that person which came out on top, a leader, and those who followed. And eventually that leader became the haves, part of the haves, and the other part would be the have-nots, the followers. And as society progressed, the leader progresses into or evolves into the king and queen, and the have-nots evolved into the workers, the serfs, the proletariats, the slaves. And so you have the haves and the have-nots, the upper echelon and the lower echelon. And so the difference of the thought process that go into being a have and the have-not are slightly different. The have-nots, just like the haves, they believe in the demand for that which is good for you, and so the haves, the leader becomes a leader because he knows that becoming a leader is good for him, and he believes often that what is good for him is also good for society. And thus that brings in dictum 2 of both the haves and the have-nots, that man is born with St. Augustine's principle of libido dominandi, the will to dominate, which is anthropologically a real principle. It's anthropologists in comparative behavior have all conferred that there is a will to dominate within the human species. And the dictum 3 is that the have-nots are inherently not good. In other words, the haves believe that the have-nots are really, in their hearts, not good. And the have-nots believe that inherently everybody is good. And then dictum 4 is that is one of the haves believe that in noblesse oblige, which came out of the 19th century French Revolution, that the nobles would provide and have a duty to provide for those who are of the not-haves, of the worker class, of the slaves, of the proletariats. They have a duty to provide a minimum level of living, and the haves believe is that there's a duty of voluntary charity. And the haves believe that when you have something, that when they jump out and become haves, that they have a duty of being charitable to others. And then the fifth principle is that the Lord Acton principle, that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's a dictum of the haves. The have-nots, on the other hand, is a principle that absolute freedom begets ethicalities absolutely. In other words, when you're free in society, then you're obliged to be ethical to others in society. Okay, so now we have the left. They have their kings and queens, and we have the two classes of royalty and nobles, and they're up here, and the nobles and their associates construct a cadre of facilitators for the haves. In other words, in order to take care as society grows, to be able to command over the have-nots, you need government bureaucrats, you need corporate management, you need facilitators in order to rule over the lower class. And in order to rule over, you need control. And control is an anti-cooperative mechanism. And but the haves can be controlling because that they believe, as we just pointed out, that the nature of the serfs are inherently bad, and so they must control them. And that was victim 3 that we just discussed. And some of the left believe that the have-nots are bad because they are just not of the social class of the haves. In other words, because they are high up in the echelon of society, they are naturally good, and those way down are the deplorables, and they are inherently bad people. And the left and the haves use this word to describe those who are not of the facilitator and king and queen class, those that are deplorables. And so these facilitators and the king and queen and the upper echelon of the control the have-nots through motivation and through the negative knowledge of plus force. Now, negative knowledge of plus force are the laws and regulations that the facilitator class uses to control the have-nots. And an example of the motivation that is present is that they will give out welfare funds to do nothing in exchange for their vote and loyalty. And the have-nots, the haves will think that they are providing and should provide a social net. And this was the concept of noblesse oblige, which was dictum 4 that we just discussed. And this is typical of societies of the communists, the fascists, the socialists, and the old king and queens of societies of the Middle and Dark Ages. But there are some in the lower echelon, in the have-not echelon, who don't want to submit to control and don't want to continue in being a serf or a slave or a worker bee. There are those have-nots that want to break out of the social network of serfdom, and they want to do that which is good for their lives, and that fulfills dictum 1, which was that all life does that which is good for it. And so the have-nots try to break out and become part of the middle class. And it'll be thought and considered by the haves that these non-cooperative serfs that broke out into the middle class are basically bad people, and their nature is inherently bad, and therefore they'll have little respect for the that is the haves will have little respect for the individual rights of these have-nots. But this is a problem for the left when the have-nots break out into the haves section of society, and they create their own middle class. The haves will try to segment the society again. It'll separate them from the facilitator class from the middle class. And for those that break out even higher and become wealthy, these people will try to be incorporated into the facilitator class by the facilitators and by the haves of the upper echelon. But back to the problem for the left when the serfs break out into the middle class. And the problem is that, as we mentioned, the first dictum of life gets in the way. Life doesn't want to be controlled because life seeks that which is good for it and continually seeks that which is good for it. And life wants to pursue goodness for itself, for its offspring, and to a lesser degree and to a greater extent, out into society. And it will do this by cooperating with individuals of society. And life seeks goodness by making sacrifices to achieve rewards. In other words, everything we do is a sacrifice to achieve a reward. And this equation produces a betterment and improvements in society, and the improvements are done by increasing the ingredients of the sacrifice. And these components are these ingredients are risk, information and knowledge, time and energy. And it's a product as opposed to if that's a product that's a service. But if it were a product, then we'd have to add in material to one of the variables, and we can actually write out a little equation for that. For the sacrifice equals the reward. And within the constituent variables of the sacrifice and the reward, most of the improvements come from knowledge and information variable, which improves the sacrifice and improves the reward. So yeah, and the reason for that is that we're already pretty busy. We can't really increase time that much. We're already our days are full, and we expend about as much energy as we can. So we try to reduce risk. So the real variable here is the information knowledge that of your sacrifice when you sacrifice something to get a reward, and therefore as knowledge improves, so does life, and the differentiation of the creativity of the new products and services that it produces. So knowledge increases the variation and differentiation of all the new types of products, and it's all due to knowledge. And so the left tends to suppress the accumulation of knowledge by its production of anti-knowledge, and the left suppresses this accumulation of knowledge because it helps the have-nots become haves, and the have-nots begin to become part of the nouveau riche class. And of course, they do this by regulations and laws. And the have-nots will become conservatives because in production of the rewards, cooperation is needed, which we just talked about here. And as the cooperation increases and the have-nots believe and trust in the goodness of others, as cooperation increases, society prospers. And by the way, cooperation equals knowledge of the efficiency In other words, when you recognize, you cooperate because you recognize that when cooperating with others, you're going to produce more than if you didn't cooperate with others. And so, and cooperation is possible by the effusion of respect. And the appropriate dispensation of respect is the essence of ethics. And we respect others in order to cooperate, and we cooperate in order to produce goods and services, which brings us up away from misery, which is the nature of all that is good. And therefore, increasing the amount of cooperation produces greater goodness in the conservative base. Therefore, the Democratic Party does not grow naturally when knowledge is being increased in society. Therefore, the Socialist Democrats search for new sources of voters with lesser degrees of accumulated knowledge, which will make them continue with their system of caste socialism and keeping their base constituent voters under control, because so they're seeking people that do not have much knowledge. And so in a democracy, to work and pay taxes, and also known as tribute, and receive welfare, they'll give out their welfare to give the basic necessities of life, thus fulfilling the noblesse oblige principle that we discussed earlier. So in fulfilling this need for votes in a democracy, the left will look to importing those with low levels of sophisticated knowledge to be their future voters. And thus the leftist haves will naturally control the unions. So they'll naturally want to control the unions, which are made up of workers that are all approximately the same in the degree of knowledge under which they do their jobs, and because they're uniform in the amount of knowledge they possess, they're suitable for union work, and the differentiation of products is of no concern to the unions. In fact, in the union situation, if you get more knowledge, and you will eventually destroy the union. The union itself will eventually disappear. So as society prospers through the increase of knowledge, and in a democracy, the left loses voters and will actually become a minority party. And it loses voters because its voters are becoming more prosperous, going from the have-not to the nouveau riche segment of society, because they're accumulating knowledge and becoming prosperous. And they don't need the Democratic Party anymore. And so that's the reason why the left looks to import low-level immigrants of knowledge and control the unions. And this is their voter base. And that's why they created the border crisis, in order to import or allow the migration of low-skilled, low-knowledge individuals. Of course, these individuals can eventually get more knowledge and prosper in society, but for now, they are needed by the Democrats in order to ensure their position in the echelons of government. Thanks for watching.